and this is the Ontario Provincial Honor Band Tuba edition, and we're going to start with the scales. So if you just flip to that page, we're going to be starting with the B-flat chromatic at the very top of the page. Now the goal here is to make the smoothest possible slur you can going from the bottom B-flat to the top B-flat. And one of the tricks I use actually is to first take your mouthpiece, make sure it's clean, and then just, buzz the lowest note. And slowly make your way up to the top, making sure it's fairly even. And then just when you're playing, try and, aside from the fingerings, which you need to practice, just try and keep it nice and smooth, just like how you did on the mouthpiece. You'll find if you need to cheat a little that you might push onto the mouthpiece. Try and resist that. If you have to, it's fine, because eventually you'll get used to your embouchure and you'll be able to play that without having to cheat. But for now, if you have to push your mouth against the mouthpiece to create a little more pressure, that's cool. Next, we're going to move on to F chromatic. It's going to start at a pretty lower note, so just make sure before you tape yourself playing it that you practice playing that low first. Okay, and well, just like the B flat, try and make a smooth rise to the upper F. And if you need to, go a little faster, not like what I just did, and just try and play it all in one breath. I'm going to try that again. Okay, and then going back down, I'm not allowed to play that for you, but same principle, just try and keep it nice and smooth so it'll sound smooth. Next is going to be the G major scale. No real tricks here, just make sure, normally tubas don't play that F sharp, but and G major arpeggio. If you need to, that the middle of the bass clef, that D, you can play that with 1 and 2. So then for the 4 notes going up, or 5 notes actually, you can do that with just 1 and 2 on a B flat tuba. So again. This way you can focus on your everything else aside from your fingers, except for, that B natural. Next we're going to play the A flat major scale. No real tricks here, just make sure to get your fingerings right. Also make sure between the fourth and the fifth note, the D flat and the E flat, make sure that's the right interval. It's a weird interval on the tuba, so just make sure to get that right. And if you have any doubts, go to a piano, play it, and then just try and match it. Next we'll try the E flat major arpeggio. And again, no real tricks to that. Just make sure to practice it. Again, it's pretty straightforward with the same fingering on every note except the second note, just like the G major arpeggio. Hi, this is the Ontario Provincial Honor Band edition, and this is Etude set number 2. And we're gonna start by looking at Etude number 1 right here, and let's take a look. So right off the bat, you'll notice that the time signature is in 6/8.
Could you do that again? I don't know, we didn't hear what you said, but we think you may have said number B. and it says Etude set B.
Oh, I said number 2. Sorry, it's set B.
Yeah, set B.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
Set B.
that's it. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, this is the Ontario Provincial Honor Band audition, and this is Etude set B. And for now, we're gonna start with number 1. And if you look right off the bat, you'll notice that the time signature is in 6/8. So what you want to do is to make sure that every first and fourth beat are emphasized. So that will give you a nice swinging feeling. And the first thing we're going to look at is going to be the decrescendo in bar 8, which I was just about to get to. Just make sure to decrescendo into a much softer dynamic so that when the forte comes just before 10, it'll be a really sharp contrast. So I'm going to start bar 6, 7. I'm going to do bar 8. And don't hold back on the forte, just soar, take the line. You'll need the air because it's fairly high anyway. And just play it and enjoy it. Let's see. Next is gonna be, you'll have a tendency when you play this, and I'll give an example with, let's see, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3. Let's take a look at bar 3. I'm gonna start from the beginning, and then I'll stop at where I want to stop. Right there. You see that 8th note that was tied to the dotted quarter? When you play this, you'll have a tendency to cut that a little short. Make sure to play that with the full value, maybe a slightly hair longer if you need to make that note speak, because it is a very important note. Again. Oops, have a little water in here. Tuba problems. So I'm gonna try that again, this time without the water. And you'll notice the same thing 2 bars later. And then again another 2 bars later. And what you want to do is to make sure to practice that interval, make sure it's nice and smooth. And again, make sure not to cut it short, or you're really cheapening the phrase if you don't play that for its full value. Next we're going to move on to Etude number 2, and it's a theme that might be familiar with you. It's simple gifts. Now, one thing to note is that if you look at dynamics, it starts off forte and then it goes down to piano. So what you want to do is to make a nice little contrast. Start really strong. So that when you get to the piano, it's a lot softer. And that way you don't have to try as hard when you get to the piano to keep it nice and soft. Next we're going to look at bar 5 and bar 7. The first 2 notes in both bars, you'll notice for bar 5, you're going from an F to a G. So open to 1 and 2 on a B flat tuba. And in bar 7, you're going from a G to an F, 1 and 2 to an open. For this, it's slightly more difficult because you're pushing two keys down to slur that. What I would recommend is an alternate fingering for the G 1 and 2. If instead you could play G with just 3. And I'll show you an example right here, bar 5. Just open and 3. And then same thing with bar 7. If you find it easier in that bar for the second triplet to play 1 3 1 3 open instead of 1 1 2 1 open, then by all means go ahead. But it should be fairly easy with just the traditional fingering. One thing to note is that if you do use the third key, that it tends to be a little flat on the B flat tuba, not so on the C. But on a B flat tuba, you want to push it up just slightly. And this applies for most other things, even an octave up. If you're going from an F to G and you don't feel confident in making it smooth, you can always replace G with 3, and it'll be easier to slur compared to 1 and 2. Next we're going to be looking at bar 13. You'll notice that there's a crescendo right under the bar, and what I recommend you do is to hold off on that crescendo in the first couple of beats. You might want to, your tendency might be to start the crescendo early. What I would recommend is to hold off on it to make it slightly more effective and really crescendo on the last beat on those 16th notes. And if you would like to take a breath right before that to give it an even nicer effect. And make sure to land onto that E flat in tune. And one last thing for these two etudes is to don't play after the half notes. If you look at bar 10 and bar 14, you'll notice that the rhythm's the same. It's a half note, a dotted quarter, and then an eighth. You might feel like you want to cut short the half note, but don't, because it is the first bar of the phrase, and because it's part of the musical line that you hold it for its full value. So let's look at bar 10 first. If you put that little gap in, it'll sound like this. If you were to sing this with the lyrics, or if just by yourself singing la 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 la, it just wouldn't make sense to put that little breath in there, because if, say I'm talking like this, if I was stopping randomly in the middle of the phrase, it would sound weird, wouldn't it? And then the same thing applies to bar 14. Make sure to hold that half note for its full value. And that was detached, and this is going to be full length. Okay, and one last thing, and what I would feel would be the hardest part of this etude would be the very last bar, that little arpeggio, where you go from the E flat to the octave above. Just to make sure to practice that. I know the E flat arpeggio wasn't part of your audition, but it's good to know anyway, and I would say it's easier than any of the other things you had to do last note. Next we're going to look at Etude C, and to be honest, I actually don't know where this is from. But we're just going to play the opening line just so you get a feel of it. Make sure everything's nice and crispy and short. And that holds true up until the very last note, where it just land with a big fat note right there. Okay. Next we're going to look at bar 7. You'll see in the second beat there's that little slur right there. And what might be easier for you right now is to, instead of using 1 and 2 for the D in that slur, go from C, 1 and 3, to just 3 for the D. So, ba-da, ba-da. Let me just write this word. So replace that D1 and 2 for 3, and you'll find that instead of having to switch fingers, you can just lift your first finger and you'll be playing the second note. Da 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 da. And that might be able to make it slightly smoother for you. But again, make sure it's going to tend to be slightly flat, so just push it up a little. Okay. Next, we're going to look at bar 14. You'll notice that there's no staccatos here, so just make sure to play it slightly longer, less detached. And then second last bar, take note that the rest there is going to be a 16th rest and not an 8th rest. So make sure you don't take as much time as the others. Okay, and so the last 4 bars will just sound like this. Oops. Let me just try that again. Make sure to really feel that missing 16th note in the second last bar. Okay. Should I do another take for the next set?
Yeah, go right into it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you were going to edit it out anyway, right? So,
Cool.
so depends on which one to do.
And we don't care about the young folks talking about the outside. And we don't care about the